Alright, so it's the richest man in the world. Alright? So I shall win, I shall prosper, or prosper win, and this is royalty. That's your power. Prosper win royalty. PWR. So it's the royalty. Shklz is introducing the royalty. This is a Getty documentary on Getty. He's the richest man in the world. He is entrepreneur royalty, also his art royalty. You might have heard of his stuff, Getty Images. That's this guy's faction. So we're going to learn who this guy is, what's his association to the art world, why is Shklz so intrigued with him to the point where he feel like he can make content off of this. This is some real good stuff. It's going to be my second go-around watching, but it's some pointers. All right, let's go.
Richest man in the world.
Yeah, we watching TV.
Let me tell you, I thought he loved me. He didn't love anyone. He didn't love anyone. That was the sad part. Only money.
So you say he only loved money. He didn't love anyone.
His
but
wives
money.
had long ago left him. He had lovers, but not much love. He had 5 sons, but no pleasures of fatherhood.
He was more interested in
That's a
business
clip.
than in his family.
As far as I can remember, he never even mentioned that he had children. It was very strange.
He was a very timid man, very nervous about burglars. He was rather remote from human relationships. He didn't give very much of himself.
No matter what it cost, J. Paul Getty could never stop making money. For him, the ancient jibe, "you can't take it with you," seemed more like a promise of release.
It's probably a good thing. Might be quite a burden.
I know it's a terrible cliche, but I think that large amounts of money create so many more problems than they can ever solve.
Getty died in 1976 and lies buried beside the ocean at his former home in California. Sharing his grave are 2 sons who died before him. The eldest, George, was judged a probable suicide. The youngest, Timothy, died of a brain tumor at the age of 12. His second son, Ronald, was disinherited as a child. J. Paul's apparent reprisal for the boy's mother's tough divorce settlement. Ronald is a recently discharged bankrupt. Today, just 2 sons share the bulk of the Getty billions. J. Paul Getty Jr., once a drug-dependent recluse, lives on a 3,000-acre estate in Buckinghamshire. His brother Gordon lives in San Francisco. He wants to be known not for his money, but for his music.
So now we know why San Francisco got a lot of paper.
But Gordon is worth around $1.5 billion. He provides generous funds for the San Francisco Opera House. He will never know whether it's his musical talent alone that draws his audiences.
I really hope that as many people as possible will perform my music. And if they do it because my name is Getty, well, I'm still happy they're doing it. So I'd say that having a name which is well known in some other field is a little more help than hindrance to a composer.
Where's your medal? Where's your medal, Getty?
J. Paul Getty Jr. has reinstated himself in society after giving more than £100 million to charitable causes. It has earned him the title of Britain's greatest philanthropist and an honorary knighthood.
So what were your feelings when you first heard?
I was very excited, thrilled.
It was from Paul Jr.'s son, J. Paul Getty III, that the money exacted its highest price. In Rome in 1973, Paul and some friends made what turned out to be a prophetic home movie. He was 16. A few weeks after acting out these scenes, Paul was kidnapped for real. The kidnappers sliced off the boy's right ear after his grandfather had initially refused to pay a $3 million ransom.
I would basically rather not comment on that, in that I can, of course, understand his feeling and anybody's feeling about not paying ransom.
They had a family member kidnapped.
It's an awful thing.
Damn.
But we, mother and father, we're prepared to negotiate.
Eagerly, the world eavesdropped on the agonies of the rich. But worse was to come for grandson Paul. 8 years after the kidnap, he suffered a drug-induced seizure, which left him paralyzed and almost totally blind. Paul's sister, Eileen, lives in Los Angeles, once their grandfather's hometown.
That's why they telling me to go to LA. Because all the top artists.
She's part of the Hollywood aristocracy.
Getty.
Getty, who used to be married to a son of Elizabeth Taylor. Eileen was just a child when she first felt the weight of the family money.
At the age of 11, I had made a very concrete decision that I didn't want to benefit from the money. I was so frightened. I knew that at 18, you're an adult. And so I thought that that's when there would be money. So I promised that I would kill myself when I was 18.
Eileen has an armed bodyguard at her Hollywood home to deter others from trying to kill her. But neither guns nor the Getty name can protect her now. From a former lover, she contracted AIDS. Though her family is free of the disease, Eileen is racked with remorse.
I felt so undeserving and so ashamed. I couldn't possibly fix what I had done to her son and to the family that we had created.
This was not the legacy Getty intended. In his last years, he dreamt of enriching mankind with a monument to himself at his former home in California.
I thought that I would build a villa in Malibu to display works of art.
Getty modeled his treasure house on an ancient Roman villa and filled it with some of the finest of European art and classical antiquities. He died without ever going to the museum he created, yet it received the bulk of his fortune. During the 1950s, Getty was based in Europe, running an oil empire from modest suites in the best hotels. In 1957, a chance mention by a Paris gossip columnist changed his life. Maggie Nolan wrote about the launch of a Getty supertanker. Her article caught the eye of a Time magazine writer. They called on Getty in his suite and wired New York that they had met the richest man in the world.
They said it was way out. This guy, in Paris is making this whole thing up. Impossible.
Time's sister magazine Fortune checked Getty's claims. Incredibly, the man in Suite 801 was worth more than $700 million.
By the month of October, Fortune magazine came out declaring who was the richest man in the world. And lo and behold, who's there? Top of the list. J. Paul Getty. Not a DuPont, not a Rockefeller, none of those fellows. There was J. Paul Getty.
That blew his cover. He had done his best to be unknown. So it's a bit like winning the big lot, and now everybody knows you've won it.
3 months later, Getty made the cover of Time magazine. Maggie Nolan was less interested in Getty's business empire than in what had driven him to build it.
He talks about Papa. Well, Papa said this, and now Papa was a wild cat. And when my Papa always told me, I thought, this is funny, this fellow's in his 60s, and he's talking about Papa.
Papa was George Franklin Getty, a hard-working insurance lawyer living in Minneapolis. In 1903, his son Paul, the future billionaire, was a 10-year-old child. In that year, a routine business matter took Paul's father down to what is now Oklahoma, but what was then remote Indian territory. When George F. Getty stepped off the train at a town called Bartlesville, he found a land in the grip of an oil boom.
It was a place for entrepreneurs of all kinds. I always divided them into 5 categories: thieves, renegades, adventurers, Indians, and missionaries. And that pretty much covered the whole lot.
Mr. Getty Sr. was none of these. He was a devout Christian Scientist who had cautiously accumulated a fortune of around $250,000. But the oil-mad atmosphere of Bartlesville seduced him.
Some wells would make as much as 25,000, 30,000 barrels a day, and it'd flow at the top of the derrick and blow the tools out of the hole. I would classify it as about as wild as you can get.
George Getty risked $500 for the right to drill for oil on 2 square miles of land. 4 months later, he struck lucky. It was the first of many strikes, and George Getty was on the way to becoming a multimillionaire. Paul joined his father in the oil business just as the First World War broke out. On this field at Stone Bluff, Oklahoma, he struck oil as his father had done 12 years earlier. Within 4 months, he had made his first $1 million. He was 23. But to his father's disgust, Paul decided to retire. He returned to the family home, now in California. For 2 years, he lived the life of a playboy while other young Americans were sailing off to the war in Europe.
The Attorney General of California told me that they were searching for, trying to get J. Paul Getty to end World War I because he had not joined the service. The story goes that he dyed his hair green and dyed his hair orange to keep from being drafted.
Getty became part of a Hollywood set that included the film stars Charles Chaplin and Clara Bow. Then a young woman called Elsie Ekstrom filed a suit accusing him of taking her virginity after getting her drunk. The case was settled out of court, and Getty returned to the oil fields. In 1923, Getty married. Jeanette Demont was 18, he was 30. They eloped without a word to his puritanical parents, and she was soon pregnant with Getty's first son, George.
To him, a pregnant woman was the last thing for him. He would say that a woman would lose her charm, her sex appeal, and everything. So it happened in his marriage. He would get married, have a son, and when the baby was ready to be born or something, he wouldn't even stay for the birth of the child. He would always go on a long business trip, never come back. And after that, divorce.
Citing cruelty, Jeanette left him after 16 months. The following year, Getty married again, a 17-year-old he met on holiday in Mexico. Within weeks, he and the girl, Aline Ashby, agreed to forget the marriage had ever happened and tried to keep it secret. While still married to Aline, he proposed to another teenager, a German girl he met in Vienna. Fini, then 18, became his third wife. He was 36, though he told her he was 29. When Fini became pregnant, she went back to Germany for the birth of son Ronald. Divorce soon followed.
I think he married women who were too young to understand what a demanding business life he had. And when you're very young, you prefer the attention focused on yourself.
One of his wives, who I got to know, told me that, well, you know, he would get up at 7 in the morning and go out and drill a hole in the ground, be there all day, come home at 8 at night with a briefcase, go through the accounts, come to my bed at 2 in the morning and disappear again. And I would say to Paul, really, this isn't a marriage. Paul, I'm going to leave you. And she said, most men would have said, I promise you, let's go off to Brighton for the weekend. Something. And Paul would just say, well, I shall miss you, dear. You see, which was no sign of lack of love. It just was a sign of priorities. He had to drill that hole in the ground, and he wasn't going to pretend that anything else mattered enough.
Soon after Ronald's birth, Getty's father died. Paul's grief was compounded by the shock reserved for him in the will. Now he discovered what his father thought of 3 teenage brides in 5 years. Of a total estate of almost $10 million, George Getty left his son just $500,000. Worse, he left the control of the family business to his wife, Sarah.
I think Paul was so hurt that it affected his entire life. It was the worst injury that his father could have done to him, to say. The will actually said, I don't trust you, so I'm letting your mother handle this.
Ever since my father died, I haven't had quite the buoyant feeling that I had before.
I think Mr. Getty spent the rest of his life proving his father was wrong. And that means, I think that is the explanation in some respects for the size of the fortune. Once you have an obsession, there is no number that's enough.
George Getty had died soon after the Wall Street crash. As share prices tumbled, Paul saw a way to confound his father. Wall Street was now a better place to look for oil than in the mud of Oklahoma and California.
The barrel of oil would be selling for, say, $1 a barrel in those days. And because of the crash on Wall Street, you could buy shares where that barrel cost 5 cents. And he simply felt it's much cheaper, if you have the credit, to be able to buy a company rather than to buy the barrels in tangible form.
But Getty's mother held the purse strings. For 3 years, she denied him the money he wanted. Now 40, he married again, a Hollywood starlet half his age called Anne Rourke. The fourth Mrs. Getty attempted suicide within the first 12 months, though the union lasted long enough to produce Gordon and Eugene Paul. Getty's mother, perhaps disarmed by this show of marital staying power, finally gave him control of the family fortune. In 1938, Getty bought a New York hotel. It was almost his undoing. Reports reached the FBI that the Hotel Pierre was a center for Nazi spies and sympathizers. They knew Getty had visited Berlin and had girlfriends close to Hitler. The FBI labeled him a security risk. When he applied for a voluntary post in the Roosevelt administration, he was rejected. Years later, a friend, Teddy Hayes, revealed how the Democrat Party chairman had reacted.
No, there isn't a chance in the world. He says he'll spend more time up in the district because we got pictures of him and Hitler and Gary. And there isn't a chance. And I went and Paul Getty was told about it. But he wrote out a check for $5,000 to the National Democratic Party.
Getty, now 46, made a fifth and final attempt at marriage. The new wife was 23-year-old Teddy Lynch, a nightclub singer with operatic aspirations. When America entered the war, Getty volunteered for the Navy. He was rejected, and he sat out the war in Tulsa, Oklahoma, running an aeroplane factory, a small part of his business empire. Working 18-hour days, he turned Spartan into one of America's most productive contributors to the war effort. His fear of enemy air attacks forced Getty to live not in his suburban home, but burrowed into the ground a little closer to the office.
He built a home near the factory, and he had an underground shelter. He was afraid it would be bombed, and he had a 8-foot reinforced concrete bunker. In case of bombing, he would go into the bunker. He had some eccentricities.
He was very afraid of fire, of sudden fire in his home.
He was very nervous of traveling.
He was afraid of traveling by car.
They were trying to get him to fly on a Spartan airplane.
Also by boat.
They just kept after him. He said, well, I will try it and see how I feel about it.
He'd seen a plane crash.
The pilot took him in the airplane, taxied out to the end of the runway, started running up the engine for magneto check and so forth, and the magneto was bad on it.
He'd been in a plane which had been struck by lightning.
So he said, Mr. Getty, I'm sorry to tell you that we'll have to go back. And Mr. Getty got out and told me he never got back in another airplane.
Life in the Midwest in a concrete bunker in Tulsa held little attraction for J. Paul Getty's new wife, Teddy. She preferred to continue her singing career in New York. As the war ended, Getty made an effort to rekindle the marriage. He bought a 75-acre ranch house fronting the Pacific at Malibu. A baby son was born, Timothy.
We used to use this place to have a party or for weekends to get away from everybody. And I, of course, used it mostly for riding, you know, to keep the horse here and to take Timmy up here because he loved it.
Timmy became another son who rarely saw his father, like his 4 half-brothers before him.
It wasn't a cohesive family in those days, the Getty family. Ronald Getty lived in Los Angeles with his mother, and George also was from a different mother and lived in a different place. Gordon and Paul lived together with their mother in San Francisco. Paul slightly resented the fact that his father paid as little attention as he did. It was a nice thing to get a check on your birthday and a letter saying, "Dear son, I'm proud of you and miss you, but it would have been nicer to have got a couple of pages than the short note.
Paul and Gordon were raised here in San Francisco. It seems life with Mother wasn't much fun either.
He was at military boarding school at age 5. She was an alcoholic, pretty unpleasant. When he'd come home for a vacation, they'd often be forced to wait out in the hallway as she'd be beaten by this boyfriend or that. I really don't think it was too terrific.
J. Paul Getty's energies were focused on expanding his company to rival the oil giants. This meant breaking into the Middle East.
I think Mr. Getty's credo was to do things on his own. I don't think he ever looked to join with other people.
In 1948, Getty sent Dr. Walton to survey a large untapped region between Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. It was called the Neutral Zone.
We flew over about 500 feet off the ground. Right to the north of the Neutral Zone was this pretty little hill, all covered with oil wells, which was the largest field in the world at that time. And right out in the southwest part was another one. Looked just like it. And I thought, there's another field down here.
Getty gambled spectacularly on Walton's instinct. He offered the sheikhs royalties twice as big as the major oil companies. The industry was appalled, but this deal would secure Getty one of the world's largest individual fortunes.
I think going over there and finding a major oil field in the Middle East, the mere finding of it was the satisfaction that he was looking for. I think money was secondary.
Walton discovered just how secondary when it came to his own reward.
I asked, what am I getting out of it? Then they ended up sending me $1,200 for 6 months.
Getty now left America for good to run the most complex of conglomerates, more than 40 companies, from small hotel rooms in London, Paris, Rome, and Vienna. He worked alone, learning Arabic and doing the deals himself, as Maggie Nolan remembers.
Paul was really a one-man empire. When you came into his suite, you'd see books and papers and reports piled all over on all the tables. He had no office. That was his office. And what was really more amazing was that he had everything in his head.
The filing system consisted of used manila envelopes, where he would then have written on the front what the contents were. And sometimes when the contents had been thrown away or lost, the old instruction would still be on the manila envelope, but you would use it again for something else.
When Getty's anonymity was shattered by Fortune magazine in 1957, the filing system of the richest man in the world came under strain.
That changes your morning's mail, you know, and so these loads of mail would come in, and some of it was pretty frightening, because people could see absolutely no reason why they shouldn't have $1 million, and they would, each of them, and they would send letters that clearly showed that they were certifiably mad.
By now, Getty had met an impeccable English woman, Penelope Kitson.
I was living in Cornwall at the time. I was married, and my marriage was pretty shaky, and he was staying with some neighbours. He was brought over to tea, and he was thrilled to bits because we had scones and Cornish cream and strawberry jam, and I don't think he'd ever had proper Cornish cream.
Penelope was to become an integral part of his life for the next 20 years, accompanying him to Europe and the Middle East. Getty employed her as his interior decorator, and she chose the colour schemes for the captain's cabins on his oil tankers.
I did launch a tanker, which was very nice. And then great cheers. It's quite emotional, actually. You almost feel you're going to cry, but you don't, because your mascara might run.
With Getty based permanently in Europe, his fifth marriage was going the way of all the others. Back in America, his young son Timothy became seriously ill with a brain tumour.
Teddy wanted Paul to go over because the child had to have another operation. And I think Paul always felt rather badly that he didn't go. And was back to the travelling thing now. And anyway, the little boy did die. And he was dreadfully upset about that.
Citing work as the best palliative for grief, Getty returned to his balance sheets. Then his old friend Maggie Nolan arranged a photo feature about a day in his life as a billionaire.
I knew the man who was doing the story, and he said, would I like to meet Paul? And I said, yes, I'd like to meet him very much. And then afterwards he came to stay, and after that he made an offer for the house. And I thought, well, life is fairly tough. I will make a price, I think I asked, which at that time seemed a lot of money. I asked about 12 million. It certainly wasn't worth that at that moment. And,
sure it did. Was all the work of art?
I didn't say the work of art, just the house he wanted. And he knew the value of everything. And he knew that I was asking too much. But after that he came down and he became a great friend and he came to stay a lot.
Paul would telephone and say, Nicole, can I come? And I said, you know, I did not invite him, he invited himself.
He wanted to be accepted by title society. That is the matter. He had a snobbish side, and so what? Nobody's perfect, you know. Huh.
One day we had Regine, you know, the nightclub owner from Paris, and it was the beginning of the twist, and Regine had brought some record and was teaching the children the twist, and Paul went and learned how to do the twist. And he was so serious about doing it. And at weekends he would start playing Monopoly with the children. And
I think anything to do with making money, he was interested, the system behind it.
Even if it was paper money.
Even if it was paper money, how you do it.
Getty, now 67, left his hotel suite at the London Ritz and bought a home, Sutton Place in Surrey, a Tudor manor house which he purchased from the financially pressed Duke of Sutherland. He also acquired a footman and a butler.
He called him Mr. Bullimore, and I said, no, Paul, you must call him Bullimore. So he settled.
Discreetly, his friends groomed the new landowner.
The way he just didn't know how to dress. He was in rag most of the time.
I remember one day it was his birthday coming along, and I said to my valet, what do you give Paul Getty for his birthday? And my valet said everything. He said his luggage is a disgrace. His shirts are all frayed at the cuffs. He needs new socks, they're full of holes. He said, you could give him anything, he needs it all.
Getty's lifestyle at Sutton Place struck every visitor as odd. It wasn't clear if he was basing it on the British aristocracy or the Sultans of Arabia. In fact, it had its origins in California, where 30 years earlier, Getty would visit the famous press baron William Randolph Hearst, the original Citizen Kane, and his mistress, Marion Davis, at their legendary home, San Simeon. Everything appealed to Getty. The long dining table, the mistress, the antique art, the menagerie, all these things he now emulated.
Paul had a lioness sleeping at the foot of his bed, and was not tame either, but a nice lioness.
He had two lions, Teresa and Nero, who had been given to him by a lady friend. They had cubs. I remember the little lions, very pretty. People were afraid of them.
I remember his lions. And I remember Sutton Place. It was dark and gloomy and gigantic and scary and filled with these black-clad English servants who were old and gaunt and scary looking, and we were convinced that if we ventured into the next room, that's where we would confront the monster. So we, deep in the guts of the house, we'd just sort of cry and wait for a parent to arrive and rescue us.
Soon Getty was ready to make his entry into British society with a housewarming party for 3,000 guests.
Paul, I think, was slightly nervous about the whole thing. He always used to say that lovely little couplet, Mr. Smarty gave a party and nobody came. Then his brother gave another, just the same. When it was going, I think he thoroughly enjoyed it.
Penelope, the perfect hostess, but never the wife.
Paul never asked me to marry him, but had he asked me, I wouldn't have married him. Because although I obviously like money and comfort, and who doesn't, I would have hated to have had all that money and been in the public view, and no, it wouldn't have suited me at all.
At Sutton Place, Getty was gathering his famous collection of semi-resident lady friends, including Lady Ursula Darboux and Mary Tessier, a Russian aristocrat.
Getty, I believe, liked very much to see those women fighting one against each other. So I watched very peculiar scenes. There was a woman from Nicaragua, from Managua, whose name was Rosabella.
I lived at Sutton Place for 15 years, being Paul's constant companion, friend, family, everything you can think of.
She was hated by other women, and she behaved always in a very strange manner.
It was glamour in hell, you know, because it was always fighting each other, all the lady friends fighting each other. But he loved that. He loved that life.
Other people.
In 1948, Getty sent Dr. Walton to survey a large untapped region between Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. It was called the Neutral Zone.
We flew over about 500 feet off the ground. Right to the north of the Neutral Zone was this pretty little hill, all covered with oil wells, which was the largest field in the world at that time. And right out in the southwest part was another one. Looked just like it. And I thought, there's another field down here.
Getty gambled spectacularly on Walton's instinct. He offered the sheikhs royalties twice as big as the major oil companies. The industry was appalled, but this deal would secure Getty one of the world's largest individual fortunes.
I think going over there and finding a major oil field in the Middle East, the mere finding of it was the satisfaction that he was looking for. I think money was secondary.
Walton discovered just how secondary when it came to his own reward.
I asked, what am I getting out of it? They ended up sending me $1,200 for 6 months.
Getty now left America for good to run the most complex of conglomerates, more than 40 companies, from small hotel rooms in London, Paris, Rome, and Vienna. He worked alone, learning Arabic and doing the deals himself, as Maggie Nolan remembers.
Paul was really a one-man empire. When you came into his suite, you'd see books and papers and reports piled all over on all the tables. He had no office. That was his office. And what was really more amazing was that he had everything in his head.
The filing system consisted of used manila envelopes, where he would then have written on the front what the contents were. And sometimes when the contents had been thrown away or lost, the old instruction would still be on the manila envelope, but you would use it again for something else.
When Getty's anonymity was shattered by Fortune magazine in 1957, the filing system of the richest man in the world came under strain.
That changes your morning's mail, you know, and so these loads of mail would come in, and some of it was pretty frightening. because people could see absolutely no reason why they shouldn't have $1 million, and they would, each of them, and they would send letters that clearly showed that they were certifiably mad.
By now, Getty had met an impeccable English woman, Penelope Kitson.
I was living in Cornwall at the time. I was married, and my marriage was pretty shaky, and he was staying with some neighbours. He was brought over to tea, and he was thrilled to bits because we had scones and Cornish cream and strawberry jam, and I don't think he'd ever had proper Cornish cream.
Penelope was to become an integral part of his life for the next 20 years, accompanying him to Europe and the Middle East. Getty employed her as his interior decorator, and she chose the colour scheme